Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. Stick around to the end to see how you can save 10% on your first purchase. Thanks, Squarespace. I had an interesting idea for a cutting board that I wanted to show you how I made. It's more of an artistic piece than any sort of technical achievement, but it was still fun to make and I love how it turned out. And since this was an artistic project, I just started off by building the canvas. I did this by building a basic maple cutting board using some offcuts I had from projects past. I got the boards planed down so that they had parallel faces, then took them back to the joiner to put a square edge on each piece. After that, I can take them over to the table saw to get them cut to what will be the final thickness of the board. This ended up being about 1.75 inches. I used Typon 3 because I wanted a little bit of extra protection against water since this is a cutting board. All I needed was 3 pipe clamps and some even pressure. After the glue dried, I took it over to the planer to get it planed down to a nice smooth surface, and then I could take it to the joiner to get a nice edge, and back to the table saw to get everything squared up. The idea I had was to have a bunch of random sized and colored dots, starting at the bottom left of the board and then gradually dispersing as you moved up and over to the top right of the board. It's a bit difficult to design something that's actually random because the longer you work on it, the more likely a pattern starts to creep in. And so that was a challenge I was facing, but I think I did okay. I just tried to make sure I did this as quickly as possible and tried not to think about it too much. I got the circle size from 3/8 to 3 inches in diameter and then started adding some color to the circles. I wanted to make sure that no two dots of the same color were touching, and so that's why I keep going back and forth here, swapping the colors to make sure that that was true. After that, I could take them to the CNC to get cut out. The 4 woods I'm using for the dots are bloodwood, osage orange, purple heart, and wenge. My initial idea was to use plug cutters and Forstner bits for all of this, but it was just going to be way too expensive to get bits that were that large, and I also don't even know if my drill press could handle plug cutters that big. I'm using a 1/4 inch spiral downcut bit, and I'm taking pretty conservative passes here because I didn't have a lot of this material and I couldn't really afford to mess up. I had the router stop shy of the bottom of these boards so that the circles would stay intact, then I could take them to the bandsaw to get them freed up. This is a 3-stage process for the installation. This first layer consists of the dots that did not overlap with each other. Later on we can do the ones that do overlap. Once again, I'm using Typon 3 to glue these in. Some of these dots were a nice press fit, but most of them needed to be coaxed with the mallet. And here's the second layer being cut out. All of these pockets are cut about 3/8 of an inch deep, and these circles were about a 1/2 inch thick. And that left me about 1/8 of an inch of material on the top to plane down later. I made sure to orient the dots with the grain running the same as the cutting board, though there were 2 casualties and 2 of the Purple Heart dots are facing the wrong direction. I'm not concerned as far as wood movement, it's just annoying if you see it. This was the scariest part of the project because I wasn't sure how this planer was going to deal with these hardwoods. Luckily, there was no tear out and everything was nice and smooth. After getting the board cut to its final dimensions, I can get started sanding. I started off with 150 grit and then moved up to 220 grit. Then I used a wet paper towel to raise the grain. I like to do this for cutting boards because I know they're not going to have a film finish and they are going to come in contact with water eventually, so it's good to get this out of the way now. I also added an 1/8 inch radius roundover so that the edges were not too sharp. I gave the board a couple coats of mineral oil and was pretty much done. It was pretty cool seeing all these colors pop out. Hey guys, I'm on camera, which is kind of weird, but thanks for watching. I'm pretty happy with how the board turned out. I think all the colors look great next to each other along with the random pattern of the dots. There is a more accessible way to make this if you don't have a CNC router at your disposal. I think you could use Forstner bits and dowels, though you might not get as great of a contrast with the colors because dowels will have end grain which tends to absorb the oil and get darker, so you wouldn't be left with as much bright color, but I think it would still look nice. I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. I'm super happy to be working with them. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform that lets you design a beautiful website from start to finish. They have a ton of award-winning designer templates to choose from. I'm using the Hayden template, but there's a bunch of other ones to work with as well. And domains are super simple to set up. Squarespace is flexible for any type of website, and it's used by a whole host of creative types. Maybe you're thinking about starting that woodworking business. Give Squarespace a shot. And if you go to squarespace.com/proloworks, you can get 10% off your first purchase. Thanks, Squarespace. And here's some finished photos of the dot board. Thanks for watching.